That really ended in disaster, frankly, which was a total tragedy because we've lost all those years in between, so there's a lot to catch up on.
Nothing in royal history came close to the morning King Charles moved to destroy Queen Camilla's future, because a marriage that had survived scandal and decades of waiting collided with the one force even love could not control: succession. The reception hall at Windsor Castle was tense as Camilla entered early and went straight toward the chair closest to the king. Charles had issued a sealed order stating that the seat belonged to Catherine. Inside the monarchy, this was not furniture. It was a declaration that the future was moving toward William and Catherine, and Camilla was being displaced. Every glance suddenly mattered, because the room was watching a queen test whether Charles still had the nerve to enforce his own command. Instead, she sat down, gripped both arms, and dared anyone to challenge her. An aide asked her to move, but Camilla stared ahead and refused to acknowledge her. Older nobles turned away. What Camilla did not know was that Princess Anne had sent the aide. Anne had suspected that Camilla would not surrender status quietly, and now she had proof. The silence around them was not peace. It was calculation, and Anne was already turning that silence into evidence. Catherine reached the doorway during the standoff and froze. William arrived behind her and saw that his wife had been displaced publicly while Camilla occupied the chair assigned to Catherine. William nearly crossed the room, but one look from Catherine stopped him. One angry sentence could create open war. Later, when William asked why she stayed silent, Catherine said some battles were not worth winning in public. The chair carried a darker history. Years earlier, another queen consort had surrendered that seat during a succession crisis. Soon, she was removed to a quiet country estate and barely seen again. Palace staff secretly called it the abdication chair. Camilla knew the nickname. By taking it, she was not protecting pride. She was challenging Charles to repeat history and betting he would not dare erase her as another consort had been erased. Charles confronted her and demanded why she had ignored his written instruction publicly. Camilla did not apologize. She said she would not disappear because the next generation was impatient. When Charles asked whether she understood what she had done, she answered that she understood perfectly and would do it again. Charles saw more than wounded pride, a wife who believed the crown was closing around her and might damage the institution to keep her place. Then Anne arrived with a file showing Camilla had been altering Charles's instructions, redirecting appointments, reshaping guest lists. One household post Charles approved went to the cousin of one of Camilla's closest friends. A ceremonial guest list had been changed twice in 1 week, removing names linked to Catherine's family and adding Camilla's allies. Each alteration looked small. Together they exposed a hidden campaign. The confrontation had moved beyond humiliation. It was now a struggle over who controlled the monarchy's entire next chapter. Buried at the bottom was a record of a secret, off-calendar meeting between someone in Camilla's household and a contact from another royal court. They had compared strategies used by another queen consort to retain power after her husband wanted her removed from public life. This was preparation. Her circle had studied resistance. Charles hid that page because revealing it would expose his own secret. Camilla's household had been watched for over a year. That evening, Charles summoned Camilla to his private study. He placed the altered Windsor seating plan before her and asked whether she intended to respect the future he was building, or whether she planned to reclaim what she believed was hers. Camilla admitted she knew Catherine had been assigned the chair. She argued that surrendering visible status would leave her queen in name only. Charles insisted it was one seat for one afternoon. Camilla laughed bitterly and said one chair was never just one chair. It was the beginning of losing everything. She said years of hatred had bought her this position, and now progress was stealing it. Charles answered that the throne was never created to prove how much they loved each other. He still loved her, but as king, he could not allow love to outweigh succession. Camilla tore off her brooch and slammed it onto the desk, saying he demanded symbols while removing power. Yet the brooch belonged to a crown-controlled trust and was only loaned during royal service. Lawyers had warned her office that it would be reclaimed if her public role changed. Camilla ignored the warning, convinced it would never happen. Charles opened Anne's file and showed her the evidence. Camilla accused William's people of building a case against her. Charles cut her off. William had recommended nothing. The decision was his alone. Camilla rose, left the brooch behind, and walked out. But by morning, Charles would need William, Catherine, Anne, and Prince Edward beside him, and removing Camilla's power would force every one of them to confront what her fall meant for their own future. The next morning, Charles, William, Catherine, Princess Anne, and Prince Edward gathered around one long table, but every person entered that room carrying a different objective. Charles wanted the monarchy stabilized before rumors outran reality. William wanted to protect the institution without allowing Catherine to become the face of Camilla's downfall. Catherine wanted absolutely no appearance of victory because she understood that public sympathy could shift overnight. Anne wanted the rules restored after watching one exception create months of quiet instability. Edward remained almost completely silent, knowing that whichever side emerged stronger would remember who stood with them in this defining moment. It was no longer a family discussion. It was the opening move of an entirely new royal order. The king's secretary unfolded the restructuring plan with chilling precision. Charles could not erase his marriage to Camilla, but nearly everything surrounding her public position could be dismantled immediately. Her household would answer directly to the king's office. Every future engagement, every appearance, every appointment, every official statement, every invitation, and every member of staff connected to Camilla would require Charles's direct approval. Years of influence were reduced to paperwork within minutes. No raised voices echoed through the room because everyone present understood that history was changing through signatures instead of arguments. Catherine lowered her eyes toward the revised schedule and immediately understood the personal cost hidden inside those pages. Royal ceremonies that had belonged to Camilla only days earlier now appeared beside Catherine's own name. She knew the public would never see administrative necessity. Many would believe she had quietly benefited from another woman's destruction. William immediately warned everyone present that Catherine must never appear eager to inherit those responsibilities. Anne responded without hesitation that protecting Camilla from consequences would weaken the crown itself because royal rules meant nothing if they failed to apply to the people standing closest to the throne. Edward offered almost no words, yet his silence confirmed that opposition inside the family had effectively disappeared. The crisis widened when Prince Harry discovered the restructuring through palace staff instead of hearing it from Charles or William. That omission became another clue in the public narrative. Harry did not defend Camilla directly, but many interpreted his reaction as confirmation of the same pattern he had criticized for years. People who became inconvenient slowly disappeared from the center of royal life. Suddenly, the story stopped being only about Charles and Camilla. It evolved into a debate about whether the monarchy quietly erased anyone who no longer fit its future. That evening, Charles walked through a palace corridor and paused briefly outside Camilla's half-empty office. His shadow rested beneath her closed door for only a second. Inside, Camilla heard footsteps stop and believed he might enter. The handle never moved. Instead of another confrontation, Charles sent only a short handwritten note asking her to meet him at first light inside the small garden room. No advisors, no officials, no legal papers. After stripping away nearly every public symbol surrounding her, Charles appeared ready to confront the one thing no royal order could fully control: their marriage. At dawn, the garden room stood completely empty except for Charles waiting alone. Minutes later, Camilla entered carrying the same photograph she had rescued from her office. For the first time since the battle began, they were not facing each other as king and queen. They stood simply as two people whose relationship had reached the point where love and power could no longer exist comfortably together. Camilla placed the photograph between them and demanded to know whether Charles had destroyed her because she embarrassed the monarchy or because he had stopped believing in her altogether. Charles answered without hiding behind official language. He admitted he still loved her and insisted those feelings had never changed. But he also confessed that the future of the monarchy demanded decisions no husband would ever willingly make. Camilla finally revealed the fear driving every confrontation. She had survived decades of public hatred, humiliation, rejection, and endless scrutiny simply to earn her place beside Charles. Watching Catherine rise rapidly through the institution made her feel that every painful sacrifice had been erased. Then came the moment neither had expected. Camilla quietly accepted that she would never compete with Catherine again. She asked for no secret promise, no delayed reversal, and no hidden path back toward influence. Charles replied with equal clarity she would always remain his wife. She would retain dignity, security, and a private home, but her public role as queen had ended permanently. Camilla placed the brooch into Charles's hand one final time and told him the crown could decide where it belonged because she had no strength left to fight for it. Neither smiled, neither walked away. Yet neither realized someone else had unknowingly become part of their most private conversation. Earlier that morning, a young groundskeeper assigned to prepare the garden room had accidentally overheard fragments of their discussion before leaving. Within days, whispers began spreading that Charles had secretly offered Camilla a substantial financial settlement in exchange for permanent silence. Buckingham Palace never directly denied the rumor. That silence became another clue, another mystery, another controversy feeding newspapers, television debates, and public speculation across the United Kingdom. By the time the sun set again, the monarchy had not ended its crisis. It had only entered a far more dangerous chapter, because the truth behind that private meeting was still hidden. And what happened next threatened to change the royal family forever.